A very good afternoon, and it's very nice to see all of you here today. Thank you very much. I was very inspired when I heard Lim Tian speak. Do you agree? Yes. He has excellent points, and we must make sure he gets into Parliament. Now, I'm a bit older than Lim Tian, so he asked, what was the CPF rate? How high was it? The total contribution employer-employee went as high as 50%. That's so much money of our savings that was locked away. It dropped during the recession, but the highest point was 50%. Now, my speech today will focus on the topic, abuse of court process. And I want to thank Lim Tian, the organizer, for inviting me to speak. Now, as you know, Prime Minister Lee sued Leong See Hien just for sharing an article. And the article was from the coverage website, Malaysia. And it's just sharing. And as Lim Tian said, hundreds of people shared the article. I think I was one of them also. Now, that article was originally published in the Straits Times Review, which was based in Australia, but we all know all the articles are about Singapore. Okay, so that was the source of that article. Now, the article was entitled, "Breaking News, Singapore Lee Hsien Loong becomes 1MDB key investigation target. Najib signed several unfair agreements with Hsien Loong in exchange for money laundering." So that was the title. Of course, PM Lee was very angry because it implied that he committed a crime, money laundering, collaborating with Najib. So he decided to sue Leong See Hien. Now, I must first declare I'm a friend of Leong See Hien. I know See Hien 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. We were both in the committee of the Singapore Professional Centre. But after that, our path went different ways. But I get to know See Hien better the last 10 years. After I left NTUC, so I get to know See Hien better. Now, I want to tell you this, that I'm a friend of Leong See Hien. So I want you to know, when you hear what I say, you must know that it is a little bit biased. Okay? So therefore, you don't believe me 100%. All right? You just have to be a bit skeptical, because I'm talking about a friend. Now, but I still hope that you still believe me to a large extent, not 100%, but 100%. Now, in the same manner, whenever I read an article in the Straits Times Review, or in the social media, or even the mainstream media, I never believe blindly, I never believe 100%. I ask, is this true? So therefore, don't just blindly believe. So this is what, and why is this so? Every article will reflect the bias of the reporter and the bias of the editor. So no article is 100% true, because it reflects bias. Similarly, when you hear me, you know I'm also biased because Leong Chee Yen is my friend. So therefore, you must ask yourself, to what extent is this true and not just blindly believe? Now, apart from the bias of the journalist and the bias of the editor, the article also reflects the wish of the boss. And who is the boss? The advertiser who gives money to the newspaper, the owner, and the government. All right? So the articles also have to please all these other parties. Now, I want to talk about Straits Times Review, which is the source of this article that Leong Chee Yen is now being sued. Now, I have read the Straits Times Review quite often, and I find some of the statements they make are quite far-fetched. They describe Lee Hsien Loong as a dictator, very often call him dictator, and make it appear that he is a bad dictator. Now, we know PM Lee has a lot of power. He controls a lot of organs of states. So no doubt he is very powerful. But to call him an evil dictator, to give the implication, I think that's a bit far-fetched. I don't think he's like the Second World War. Who is the person in Germany? Adolf Hitler. And then who is the person in Russia? Joseph Stalin. So I don't think it's in the same class, no. All right, so he might be having a lot of power, but we can't call him an evil dictator like the other two. Because if Lee Hsien Loong is an evil dictator, I won't be here today talking to you. All right, I might even, I would be in jail, or I might even be disappear. Now, therefore, whenever I read the articles in Straits Times Review, I read it with caution. I also am skeptical. I ask how much of it is true and how much of it is not reliable. Now, on the allegation of complicity, that means PM Lee connived with Najib, money laundering, is it true or not? Nobody knows, except the parties directly involved, if any. I don't even know whether that's the case. So, if any article were to say they connive, I don't think the journalists would know. So therefore, I will come and say, all these allegations cannot be proven, except sometimes they will come and say, here is a document. But the document, is it genuine or not? And usually the document, very hard to follow, so somebody must interpret. So the interpretation, is it correct? So therefore, it's very difficult to say this article many people believe. Because in most cases, the people who read will be quite skeptical. They will ask, is this true? You agree? All right? So therefore, I think, because Mr. Leong shared the article, it doesn't have much impact, with due respect to Mr. Leong. Okay? So therefore, if PM Lee says it's very harmful for Mr. Leong to share, I don't think so. Even if I share, I think most of you also don't believe me. All right? So therefore, my point is the sharing of the article do not have much impact. Now, I know there are some people who are so anti-government. Anything bad about the government, they believe 100%. So, but these people already made up their mind. So they don't need to be influenced by any sharing. They already make up their mind. So therefore, I'm very disturbed. Why does PM Lee want to sue Leong Si-Hien? What is the purpose? What is the motive? And why does PM Lee don't want to sue Straits Times Review and the coverage? The Straits Times Review, the coverage have got much bigger reach. More people read. And why doesn't he sue? Now, why doesn't PM Lee why does PM Lee want to sue Leong Si-Hien? You want me to tell you? Yes. I won't speculate on it. Now, Mr. Leong has decided he wants to countersue PM Lee for abuse of the court process. I agree with this action, and I think it's brilliant. And I think credit must go to Lin Tian, I think, or maybe Si-Hien. So, I have contributed to Mr. Leong's legal defense fund. Not $1, okay? A little bit more. And I'd like to ask all of you to contribute so that we'll send a very strong message that he gets the support of many people. So do contribute. If you haven't spent your SG bonus, go into that fund. All right? Now, why do I contribute? I know Mr. Leong is not a rich man. But he's not a poor man either. But that's besides the point. But I also know PM Lee is extremely wealthy. I don't know how wealthy he is, but I think 100 times of Mr. Leong. Maybe more. Maybe more. So when you go to court, someone with a lot of wealth and an ordinary person, we don't want, because someone can afford to pay expensive lawyers, that they win. That's not fair. So this is why it's very important that this case must be fair. Our law must be fair and cannot be depending on who has more money. It has to be equal. Now, how to make it equal? Therefore, I call on PM Lee, whatever is the legal fees Mr. Leong has to bear, PM Lee should pay. After that, then let the court decide whether or not it's defamatory and whether or not he should be penalized for harming his reputation. So therefore, I call on PM Lee. It's a small sum to you, because the legal defense for Mr. Leong could be easily tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. I think ordinary people cannot just call it peanuts. It's not peanuts. It is a lot of money. So therefore, to be fair, to be equal, I call on PM Lee, you pay for the legal defense of Mr. Leong, then we decide how to solve this matter. it's very important that our law and the administration of the law must be fair and just for every citizen. And we cannot let the wealthy people bully the ordinary people. So if PM Lee accept my suggestion, then I will ask my friend Mr. Leong, withdraw your countersuit, abuse of court process. But better still, maybe PM Lee should just withdraw his defamation suit. There are other important things he has to do. All right? So I would like to thank you for coming, and I hope you agree with what I say. If not, thank you anyway.